Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hello and welcome again to the next episode of the New World Order Podcast Showcase. I am extremely excited to get this episode started because I am talking with Belinda Warburton, and she's also known as B, and I love that. This is going to be a really great conversation. She's an internationally certified and accredited body confidence coach, and she's the owner of B's Boutique. So I'm just going to give you the floor, B, because I would love to just hear your story, where you came from, what got you here, where you're going, everything about you, what you're doing. So this is the show. This is the episode all about you. So here you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for having me on. I've been really looking forward to this. So yes, where do I start? Okay, I'm going to do quite a reasonably quick synopsis from younger to really where it began. And that way, if anybody's sort of trying to resonate me, who wants to resonate with me, they might understand body confidence is something you either becomes later in life or it's lifelong. And for me, it was lifelong. I remember being 11 years old, standing on the school field, having just started my womanly things. And all of a sudden I felt, oh my God, I've got boobs, I've got a butt, I've got a belly, I'm fat. Everybody looked slimmer and taller and just different to me. And that's pretty much where my journey started. And it sort of shaped really the first half of my life, I suppose. So at all through my years of school, I loved dance, I loved gymnastics, ballet, tap, amateur dramatics, you name it, the whole lot. Really creative, loved that side. And had this thing in my head that I would always just leave school, go to drama college, become an actress, and that was my life. And I never wavered from that until I became 16, and I was brought up. I'm the youngest of two sisters with my mum and dad. And at 16, so my eldest sister had stayed and done A-levels. My other sister had done a secretarial course. And when I said to my mum, I'm going to go to drama college, she looked horrified. Now it would be very different, but of course then, and it was like, now we need to have a conversation. That's not a career. I was like, okay. No, she said, that's not a career. That's what rich people can do. So, okay. She said, we can't afford that. So you need to think again. You're either going to stay on in education or you're going to get a job. And at that point, I was really disappointed. And I think I internalized it as my mum doesn't think I'm good enough. And it wasn't. It was just how they were brought up and you know. So I didn't go. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I just fell into a job in retail, which I didn't hate. And I did a really good training system with them. They're a very big, recognized company. So it was good from that respect. But for the whole part of my 20s, I just fell into jobs. And I had to... Every job I worked in, I had to excel. I had to be the best, to the detrimental of marriages, health, everything. And I think the Belinda that everybody knows now, or B, as everyone calls me, that they know now, is quite a level-headed woman. And then there was no level B. There was B, who was on top of the world, or B, who was so down in the doldrums that she wouldn't actually leave her house. So there was sort of two sorts. And my family and my friends saw the happy-go-lucky party, girl. And not many people got to see the other one. My middle sister, I was very close to. I'm close to all my family, but my middle sister I was very close to. We have the same lifelong problem with our body image, and she would see those parts of me, but she wasn't able to help me either, because they would be the same for her, just at different times. And then in my late 20s, after a particularly bad shopping trip and various other things, and I had somewhere really big and special to go, couldn't find anything to wear, and I was only a size sort of 16 to 18 then, but it was still really hard to get young clothes then. I actually contemplated what the point of me being here was. And I think that just sort of, I didn't even tell my sister actually, and that just sort of like, I just sat there, and the next morning I woke up and I thought, this is serious, there's something not right. I'm not computing right, you know. I wouldn't go to the doctors. I was so embarrassed, too embarrassed. So I'd heard about counselling or therapy, or whatever you want to call it, and then it was counselling. And so I did a bit of research and I thought, maybe that's what I need. 3 phone calls later, I found someone who I actually felt wasn't judging me and I felt comfortable with. And so I had 2 years of counselling. Now, prior to that, I had married my husband when I was 22. He was a lovely, lovely guy. But prior to that, I'd been in quite an abusive relationship. And through the counselling, I also found that my husband was really beautiful, really lovely. And I loved him as a person, but I wasn't in love with him, not like that. And so I made the really tough decision to leave. I broke his heart, and that landed me with even more guilt. And I hadn't really worked on my body confidence then, just worked on a lot of issues in my past, because therapy tends to deal more with your past. And then I left and came, well, I was going to go back home to my mum, who was divorced then from my dad. So my mum and dad divorced when I was 18. And I didn't want to live with her and her boyfriend. And I met my now husband, which is strange because he was my childhood sweetheart. He was divorced. He had a house. He needed someone to rent a room because he couldn't afford it on his own. And I rented the room, and we didn't start anything at that point. I was in no place to really. And he had 2 very young children, which really hadn't been on my sort of radar. And yeah, so, and then a few years later, we sort of fell into step, I suppose, and it all just sort of happened from there. And at that point, I still had some body confidence issues. I still had a lot of body confidence issues, actually. And I started working for a very big corporate weight loss company because I'd lost lots of weight. First time ever in my life. And I have done every single diet I think is even possible. And my first recollections of diets, my sister was 8 years old when she was put on a diet. So she's 6 years older than me. I have been brought up in that environment my whole life. And we always did the next thing together. The Cambridge diet, I mean, you name it, there's just like a list of them. And we just always was looking for the next thing that would take away these feelings that we had about ourselves. And then, let's say, I worked for this company, and it was great to start off with. I became manager for them and worked really hard and done really well. And it was great. And then my husband had a really serious accident. So I was working one day and got a phone call. He's a painter and decorator. He'd fallen 30 foot off his ladder. He had 2 bleeds on the brain and a fractured skull. And they said to me, we're rushing him to one of the head hospitals in the UK, and he may not survive the night, so you need to come. And we hadn't been married that long, maybe about 5 years. And it was like my whole world was turned upside down. And I didn't tell anybody. I just went on my own, and I sat they let me stay at the hospital overnight. And I remember I never slept and just laying there thinking, what if he dies? What if he dies? I have been working my butt off 24/7 for this company because I'm so determined to be great at everything I do, to the detriment of my own marriage. And I think that was my first wake-up call, really. He did pull through, thank God. And but it took a lot of recovery time. He wasn't himself. People who have brain injuries do change. And I felt like I had to get to know someone else, someone new. So I stepped down at that point as a manager and went back to being a leader because I just couldn't cope with the pressure of everything. And then it was about a year later, and I hadn't been feeling well, but everything had been concentrated on him. And I went to the doctor, said, oh, I'm having a lot of headaches, don't feel particularly well. And he said, oh, it's probably a contraceptive pill. We'll change it. You're getting older, that kind of thing. And he changed it. And within 2 days, I was back on I said to him, I think I'm allergic to it. Something's not right. Something's going on. And went back in and he said, oh, we'll just take some bloods from you. And he's nice enough doctor, but a typical male doctor. Yeah, no idea what he was taking bloods for, what he was testing for, didn't think to ask. And then I got hauled in a week later, or hauled in, that sounds awful, got called in a week later. Mm-hmm. And he just sat there in front of me, and I was 38 years old, and he said, you are going through menopause.
Wow, 38.
38. And I was like, no, that can't be. I mean, I didn't really know a lot about menopause. My mum had never discussed it with us. I wasn't really aware she'd ever gone through it. So I was like, that's just can't be. He goes, and I see on your file you don't have children. So I went, no. He said, so we need to talk about that. And I'm like, right, okay. It's just this, I was just in shock, really. And I went home and I just cried. And it was weird because I sort of thought I probably wouldn't have children, but I never actually made a decision. And then someone's telling you can't. And then my next thought was, only old people have menopause, which is a terrible thing to say now, but it was how I was. So, and the other thing that had happened is I started putting on weight again. And I was doing exactly the same thing. And I was like, oh my God, something's, why can't I control this? Why can't I keep this under control? And the company I worked for had no empathy at all with that. Absolutely none. And yeah, so in the end, I went back to the doctors. I said, I'll do it naturally. No, I'm not going to have children. I've made a decision, chatted with my husband. And he said, oh, you won't do it naturally. He said, if you want to look 50 when you're 40. I was like, okay. No explanations, no nothing. Anyway, thankfully, he referred me to a specialist and she was female. Oh, my God. It was like an eye-opener to me. And it was something I found out later on, but she had given me all the stuff to research. And I think I just didn't want to do it at that point because I was in a bit of denial, I think. And so there's no early menopause in my family, so it's not hereditary or anything. But when you're if you have a really big shock, your body if you put your body into a really big shock, you can actually bring onset of certain things, illnesses and all sorts. And that's where I think my menopause happened, because it was a year after the shock of my husband. And I think that's how it happened. So it was at that point, I just knew that I had to break away from the corporate world, that I had to take control of my life, and I wanted to be around home more. And I didn't know what I could do. I was a bit naive, I suppose, really, in some ways, but I'd got a lot of skills. So I started Bees Boutique, and it just started out as accessories first of all. I mean, at that point, I struggled so much buying clothing that I just used to buy the most beautiful accessories instead, because clothing shopping was horrid for me, absolutely horrid. So I used to buy fabulous accessories, and that's what I did in the shop. And then it didn't quite work out where it was, and I relocated the shop. And then someone just said to me, you should do clothing. And I thought, oh, have I got the skills? I'm not very good at buying clothing, because I'm my size. And that opened a whole new world to me. I realized that, you know, what the high streets have in their shops, you can find so much different stuff, so much better stuff. And, you know, and at the time that one size fits all was born, and the Italian styles and stuff. And it was just like, it's just like a whole new world opened up to me. And so I opened up a whole new world to other women like me as well. Women who were young but bigger and wanted to be trendy and look good and didn't want somebody to tell them what they can and can't wear. And it was fabulous. And that's when my body confidence journey really started. So I dealt with a lot of my past stuff, but still had issues about my present. And it was a slow journey to start with. I sort of did a lot of surface stuff that you can get freely everywhere. And it was a really good thing because it started to change my mindset. I became much more positive. So it was all of those things. And then, but unfortunately, my sister was still in the realms of diet and finding the next thing. And I kept trying to say to her, I don't think that's the way. I think there's something better. I hadn't found it myself at that point, still dipped in and out of diets, but you know, I just had this feeling there was something else. And then so the shop went on, and I serviced women, and I talked to women about their bodies, and, you know, that's what it was like. And then the pandemic hit, and it was a shock to all of us. And at that point, I had a website, but we'd never done we'd done online stuff, as in Facebook and all that, but it was pictures. You know, it was all that kind of stuff. I'd never actually put myself out there. And I remember in the first weeks, my colleague, who's my best friend, who works with me, she manages the shop, she actually rang me and said, you need to go on a video. You need to start doing videos. And I was like, I can't do that. She said, yes, you can. I said, no, I can't. People are going to go on. They're going to go, oh, your hair's stupid. Oh, you're fat. You're this, you're that, the other. It instilled this in fear into me that I've never felt before. And she said to me, what's your biggest fear? Losing the business, or a few comments that might come up? And I thought about that, and she was absolutely right. So videos started in my house, which was, some people had a fantastic pandemic. I did not. Okay. I'm going to be totally honest. I moved my mother-in-law in because she'd lost my father-in-law late the prior year, and she's not good at being on her own. My stepson had moved in for the first time ever living with us at Christmas. And there I am, really worried about losing my shop. And then I'm propelled into this world of videos, and I'm like, oh my God, this is, this was not the pandemic for me. I'm going to be honest with you.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on.
It was, and the first videos I did, oh my God, it was so amusing. I would re-record until they were absolutely spot perfect in every way. And then the first one went out, and actually I was really amazed by the responses. And the responses were, oh my God, it's so lovely to see you. We're cooped up. It's great to hear your voice. You're always so uplifting. And I was like, oh, wow, this is not too bad, actually. And then I had to come up with all these things, because at that point we weren't allowed to travel. The shop wasn't local. So it was like I had a certain amount of clothes in my wardrobe that we had, but I didn't have everything. So I had to come up with other ideas. And I can't believe that actually on one of those videos, I ended up appearing in a swimsuit. That would have just been so, because I was doing cover-ups at that point. Oh my God, I look back at it now, and I look back at how amateur they were and stuff. But, you know, it was whatever you could do at the time.
So interesting that you have such a wonderful flow to how you are, to your point now.
Yes.
And I love that. And I think a lot of people that are listening can resonate with so many things that you spoke about today, whether it's the relationship with your sisters, or your first marriage and then your second marriage, and going through a tragedy, and then having that business and having that confidence and losing weight, and the yo-yo diets that we all whether we admit it or not.
Yes.
We all
all
do it,
do.
even when we have the knowledge and we know this, but we're a humanity of quick fixes, and we are a humanity of pushing those past feelings down and avoiding them. And I think that resonated with me, where you realize yourself, like, okay, something is just not right. Like, something's not right. And these things, I think a lot of things affect most people, but it's how you deal with them and how you recognize them. And denial is a huge thing. And I can't imagine, of course you would be in denial if a physician was telling you at 38 you were, having menopause, and you don't want to think about. And then on the same front, it's like, okay, well, maybe this is the reason for a lot of things that I've been going through.
Yes.
It's all very, very fascinating to me. So how did you get into, like, obviously, so we're in the pandemic, can't get to your shop. You're
Okay.
now, you conquered this confidence issue and fear, right? So now you're on video and you're actually getting to a swimsuit. How do you get to where you're now able to coach?
Okay, so what happened was we went through the first year pandemic, managed to keep the shop going. Actually, it was great. We had a fantastic summer over here, which is always brilliant for us. And then January 2021 came. So the first thing was my husband broke his ankle and wasn't able to work, which was, oh my God, we're both self-employed. What do we do financially? And then my sister was still in the same place. We hadn't moved forward. She was still dieting. And I'd seen her. She'd been isolating because she's bad asthmatic. And she'd been isolating since the March, April previous. I'd seen her 3 times in a year. And this is the sister I saw on a regular basis. We'd spoke all the time. And we were supposed to have Christmas together in 2020, and then it got cancelled last minute, and so we didn't. So I saw her for 5 minutes on my doorstep Christmas Eve. And the most time I'd spent with her was in the November. I had to take her to the emergency vets with her cat because her husband was at work with the car. And we had to sit in the car, hand the cat over, and we were in masks. It was an hour and a half. And she had been digesting, and I hadn't realized everything that was being put out. She was watching it avidly. And she sat there and she said to me, if I catch this, I will die. And I said, don't be so silly. Of course you're not. Please stop looking at it all. It's not all totally as it seems, You really need to detach yourself from it. And then in the January 2021, I had a phone call. She was in an absolute state. Her husband was a train driver, had to continue working, and he had contracted COVID and he'd brought it home. She'd isolated him in the bedroom. So this was the first day she knew about it. And that was a Tuesday. And on the Thursday, she phoned me. She had tested positive. By Saturday, she couldn't keep her oxygen levels and she was admitted to hospital. Obviously, right in the middle of this, not allowed to see her or anything. So the first couple of days, it was texting. Then we were asked to, I had a phone call from it's my brother-in-law, my niece and nephew. My brother-in-law's not the dad of my niece and nephew. And they have been told, could they stop texting? She needed to rest. And that was on the Monday. She was taken to ICU on the Tuesday, which I wasn't overly concerned about. Having had my father-in-law in ICU, you actually get much better care. So I wasn't overly concerned at that point. And then on the Wednesday, they were contemplating moving her to another hospital. And then on the early hours of Friday morning, she died.
Oh, goodness.
And I felt like my world had fallen apart.
Yeah.
And I had to, so my brother-in-law phoned my mum who lives abroad. I phoned my dad, and my dad's ex-army, very strong man. I've never seen him cry. And he cried on the phone. It was awful. And then I went into overdrive. just, okay, so we've got to get this funeral sorted out. We've got to do the best we can. We can't do much because we're on restriction. I wanted to make sure my niece and nephew, I mean, they were 24 and 27 at the time. I wanted to make sure they were okay. And my brother-in-law fell apart. My sister was his world, and he literally fell apart. And so I just took over. I just did what I always do, and I just took over. I ended up actually having to, I never wanted to see a dead body, never have, but I had to. I couldn't believe it. If I had not have seen it, I would never believe she had gone. So 5 weeks later, we had the funeral, and then all of a sudden, the shop's reopening. I'm thrust back into business, and I just carried on checking in on everybody, you know, making sure everybody else was okay. And then come to Christmas, I could feel something happening to me, and it wasn't good. And come the January, yeah, I ended up having to go. I ended up having to call the doctors, and they put me on depression tablets, and they referred me to therapy, grief therapy. There was a hell of a long waiting list at that point, as you can imagine.
Of course, yeah.
And in amongst all of this, I had been thinking about doing something else. And my dad also got sick as well. It was just a whole messy.
Yeah,
really, really messy.
Yeah.
And I found coaching. I think, or maybe coaching found me. I'm not 100% sure.
Most likely.
Yeah. But I think what made me realize that it was my calling, it's right, is my sister. She was on a diet the week before she died. And she'd been on a diet since she was 80 years old, and she was 54.
This was her life. This was a focus in her life.
And I'd already started my journey, and I thought, I don't know how much longer I've got. We don't know. And I'm not going to continue to live it feeling unworthy about myself. Yeah, I'm not having it. I'm not doing it anymore. And so, yeah, I found coaching, and through coaching, I was coached myself, and I trained as a coach. I certified, first of all, to make sure I thought I was doing the right thing.
Right.
And I was. In the meantime, while I was training, I was also going through grief therapy. I was having coaching, and my dad was in hospital. It's a bit full on. But they say you come out stronger, and I absolutely have. And then I decided that was it. I want to do this. I listened to too many women walking in my shop so down on themselves because of their age, because of their shape, because of their arms, and I thought, no, this needs to change. We've got all this equality that we're supposed to have in this world with women, but actually societal standards are still making us feel, unworthy. If you can't look like this, or be like this, or be this size, then you're not worthy. And I think my passion has just grown, really, also from my sister's passing as well. And it's given me the strength to carry on when there was a very dark time when I didn't think I could. And so then I qualified, and I qualified in 2022, but I didn't really launch my business until earlier part of this year. And I'd been coaching other people who I'd met. So met a really lovely set of coaches who were all doing the same thing, and we all coach in different areas. And so it just took off from there, really. And obviously I've still got Bee's Boutique at the moment. The future of the shop's I'm going to be honest, a little uncertain. It's been much harder in this last year than it's ever been. So, it may be time to call a day and move forward, and that's okay. For anybody out there who's feeling like they might have to give something up and they feel a failure, it is not a failure. Okay. It's a process that you've gone through, that you've learned from. And if it's time to move on, you'll know when it's time to move on.
Yeah.
But the coaching made me realize the biggest thing for me with my body confidence was I just didn't feel worth it. Like I said, I had two sisters and a very close family, so nothing untoward in that respect. But my eldest sister is really clever, excels at everything. She's got letters after her name. Nikki, who I lost, was always going to be a mum and have the children. I didn't fit into either. I wasn't really clever and I didn't want children. So I'd always felt this need to prove myself. And that's where my sort of body confidence, it was just a total lack of not worthy. And that culminated into the way I looked, my body shape, my size, which then led me down the yo-yo dieting, which took more away from me than it gave back. For me, yo-yo dieting, I realize now, it took away my sense of self-worth. Every time I failed, I believed I'd failed, not the diet, me. And also it took away my ability to know when to stop eating and to enjoy food. It has taken me nearly 4 years to be able to eat fruit because I like it and not because I have to.
Mm-hmm.
And fruit is beautiful.
Mm.
But because I had a diet plan once that said you could eat as much of that as you liked, I just ate it because I could.
Yeah, it was more of a chore rather than enjoyment.
So,
yeah.
And treating my body nicely. Everybody will tell you she's so kind, she's lovely, she's helpful, whatever. But I never treated myself with that respect at all. Never felt I deserved it until I'd done the work. And it's been a long journey and it's been a hard one, and I'm still on it. Okay, not every day is perfect. If I have a day where I don't sleep very well, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh God, look at me wrinkles, look at this, but the great thing about it is I can stop it. As soon as that negative thought, I can stop it. I can go, don't talk, absolutely fabulous. It's that kind of not letting those negative and intrusive thoughts in, stopping them before they take hold. And I love coaching people. I love women specifically. I do. I love seeing the change that you can, or the realizations that they have just by me holding a space, asking them the questions, the right questions, and asking them uncomfortable questions to a degree as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to get a bit uncomfortable to become comfortable. And yeah, I'm enjoying the journey so much. I want to do more of it. So yeah.
No, and it's just, you have such a warmth about you. And I think what makes what you're doing more powerful, in my opinion, is your journey. And I think that's what's so great about coaching itself, because everybody, there's a lot of coaches out there, and they have their specific niche, or they have their specific kind of specialties in what, but I think it's really beautiful and brilliant that you went through obviously so much, and you brought yourself, you still got up. Like, it was hard, it was difficult, but you still got up. And then the other thing came and I still got up. I myself have been, it felt like tragedy after tragedy after tragedy after tragedy after negative. There's so much negative. So of course you're going to beat up on yourself, because it's, we're not supposed to ask this, but it's how I was brought up, not why me, and like, don't ever be a victim, and like, so we get quiet, but we internalize all those things. And we sometimes don't admit or want to admit, or it's embarrassing to admit that we're struggling with these things. And or if someone's saying, well, if you're that weight, then just lose weight. It's easy in the respect of like the things that you need to do scientifically.
Yes.
But when you factor in emotions and feelings and pressures and being, and events that happened, that it's a very, very difficult process. And then you get yourself there and you're stuck, and then you feel worse about yourself because you got yourself there. And it's just a spiral. It's just a spiral.
Yes.
So I think it's a really, really beautiful thing. And it's a really beautiful testament to, you coming out of your struggles and having that testimony to say, listen, and not comparing people's hardships, because everybody, obviously goes through different things, but to say, like, listen, if I can have gone through what I've gone through, and they're never going to stop. So there's still going to be events and things that are going to happen. Like, it's never going to change. It's never going to change.
Yeah.
Just there'll be different things, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Like, that cliche saying is so ultimately true.
It
That,
absolutely is.
right? I mean, if you can make it past all of those trials and still come out as positive as you are, I don't know who wouldn't want to work with you because man, that was some story, and unfortunately, I have some, stories as well, but it's very easy to stay in that uncomfortable state. Do you find that a lot of people, it's just much easier to stay in that state
Yes,
than to go through the work to
it's the
get
fear as well. And also, like you said a little while ago, it's the quick fix. They're looking for the next quick fix to get out of it that feels comfortable, that doesn't involve putting them through a little bit of discomfort. You have to step into your fear to move forward. Otherwise, you will always just be where you are. And the other thing I've found is it's the strongest women that aren't coping. So outwardly, we look like we're coping. We do everything to look like we're coping, but internally we are not. And that was quite a surprise and an eye-opener to me, and actually an eye-opener to the people around me as well, who always saw me as this really strong character, that actually inside I was screaming for help.
Yeah. Yeah, those are most often the people who feel the worst about themselves, don't feel worthy. I can relate to this on a personal level. If a lot of people would look at me in my life, and I'm a happy person, but if they would look, they would, oh, they're just perfect. They're just, and then that in itself is very, very difficult to live up to. So it's almost like you play a role and then you have to like keep up with it, because
Absolutely.
the second you maybe lose it a little bit, or it's too exhausting, or immediately it's, what's wrong, what happened, why are you feeling this way, you have a beautiful life, you have beautiful children, you have a beautiful
Back home, and
and it's just like, well, yeah, well, I'm struggling. Well, how dare you, how could you be struggling? Like, they can't compute. So we put so much pressure on ourselves and our image.
I think I sort of looked at it, and I was thinking the other day, and I was thinking, when I said, I wanted to be an actress, I actually have been an actress of my own life for too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've put on this facade, this, this other person. And I turned 50 last year. And I think it's, I can, for the first time, I can honestly say, I feel like me. I am not doing anything to please anyone else. I am, don't get me wrong, I look after everybody, my family look after my, I have no problem with that, but I have to look after me first to be strong as I need to be able to look after them. And the other thing is, I remember when I started my coaching and found out how much it was, I was like, oh my God, should I spend that much? I find a lot of women, and even if they're earning the money or they've got the money, they don't think they should spend it on themselves.
Yeah.
They're happy to give it to their kids or
Mhm.
let their husband buy really expensive things, but to spend it on yourself, no, you don't do that.
Yeah.
And I found that with the body confidence thing, particularly with the age group of women I work with. And I can't get across enough, when I say body confidence, it affects every single part of your life, every single part. And by doing the journey, that also affects every single part of your life in such a positive way that it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable that it can be, that you can actually get to feel really good about yourself, even though I'm 50 years old.
I think that right there is the most important point because it's connected to everything. Whether people want to believe that, whether they're in, denial, whether they think it's even possible, like how could me looking, having a few extra pounds or being overweight affecting how I can confidently do my job or how I can but it does, because if your confidence level is so low, if you feel so terribly about yourself, how can you be the best wife that you want to be? How can you be the best employee that you want to be? How can you be the best mother you want to be, or daughter or sister? Every role that we have, how can you do that if you feel so horribly about yourself?
Exactly. And the other
Yeah.
thing I said something, because I write poetry, and I'm going sort of in the process of doing a book of poetry, uplifting poetry, but funny and relevant. And I wrote a sentence the other day, and I thought this is really quite good. And it was, be the mother you want your daughter to be. Because if you're struggling with all these issues, you just don't realize how much of that rubs off on your children. And like I said, my sister being 6 years older, being on a diet from 8, that rubbed off on me massively. And that was my sister's influence. My mum was very lucky. She's quite slim. She's a different build. We're dad's build, and she's a different build. So, and I thought about this the other day, and I thought that is so true. Really think about how you are and what you're projecting. And I will say this to anybody, and they won't believe me. You can spend, and I bet you've spent God knows how much in your lifetime on diets, lotions, potions, even plastic surgery, if you've got that much money, that kind of thing. If you do not work on loving yourself inside, you are not going to love yourself outside, no matter what you do, because that outside body is going to change as you get older. Whether you like it or not, it's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So B, how can people get in touch with you to kind of learn how to go through your coaching or your process?
Okay, so my website is www.belindawarburton.com. Now, from my website, there is every link that you need. So you can read my story. You can book your disco. I offer 12-week coaching packages. They're one-to-one coaching packages. They are designed, they are not pre-written. They are designed differently for every woman that I deal with because their needs are different. Okay. But I do a 1 hour free discovery session, no obligation, where you can impart onto me all your information. I will give you a very strong coaching session. And then at the end, we'll talk about what I can offer and what I can do and how I can help you. So that's the discovery session. Then there's a free resource section on the website. So you've got a book you can download free, and you've also got a link to the private Facebook group. So I have my socials, which are on Instagram and Facebook, which is Belinda Warburton, or if you're Instagram, Warburton Belinda. And then on this, the link on my website takes you to the Pink Power Body Confidence Hub. And that is my free Facebook group. Now, my socials get a lot of content. My Facebook group gets a lot, but my Facebook group private one gets me live every week. So on a Tuesday evening, I go live. You can ask me any questions. You can interact. You can just watch. You can catch it on replay. So that's what I do in there. And then there's another tab, which is my journal. So that is an item you have to pay for. But I have created a 12-week body confidence journal. Now, my coaching clients get that free of charge. But if you want to start and have a go at the journey on your own, it's got lots of great hints, tips, questions to answer, things to do. And that is a downloadable format or hard copy format, depending on where you are. And then on the very last page is my contact page for anybody who'd like to have me on their podcast or have me as a motivational speaker, or right. So that's my website's pretty comprehensive. And as I say, my socials are the next place where you can find me.
Beautiful. I love it. And I thank you so much for sharing your story and, having the courage to share that, and then actually having the know-how and the love to want to share what you've learned from the struggles that you have. And I think that's an absolutely beautiful thing. So with that, I thank you very much for coming on. I knew this conversation was going to go long. I knew it. which is beautiful because I thought it was a beautiful conversation. So thank you so much, B, for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've loved every moment of it. And it's just so nice to talk to other people who feel the same as well. It's fabulous.
Absolutely.
And if I can affect any one thing for anybody out there, then I've done my job.
Absolutely. Thanks, B.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the You World Order or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.